Another impromptu, guys, like I said. Yeah. Whatever ADD I have, or so the DHS position back in '07 when I did my physical for DHS mentioned like, oh, there's a possibility he's got ADD. Good to know. Anyway, study break. I did take a look at my learning units, and I was listening to or tuning into a functional dietitian. I think it's functional dietitian or FDN webinar. Uh, it's very easy given the wild, wild west of the interwebs where you get info at the drop of a hat. Very easy nowadays with a lot of Facebook. At least that's where I find it. A lot of Facebook ads, Coop-based ads about this and that learning opportunity. And it's very easy as I'm listening to or tuning into China Insider David Young. It's very easy to get emotionally invested in this and that piece of information or this and that piece of knowledge, depending on where you go. So as I'm navigating the waters of a career change, given what I'm studying, it's very easy to be emotionally invested in my learning process as well. And there is a danger for me to say, that's gospel or that's the absolute truth. But as I mentioned in my tribute to the late Tim Tackett, we only get a piece of the truth. We only get a slice of the pie, which when we look at it, it is a giant piece of pie beyond our own comprehension. So it's very easy to get caught up in whatever outlet, and it's very dangerous when we go to sources we're comfortable with. Are there certain outlets that could inflame us, outrageous? Take your pick. Take your pick. It's easy to get angry over source A versus source B. Very easy. If you want, I would say get a notepad. And in my honest appraisal of what I've got in my stockpile, way more notepads than I thought I was going to get. Very easy. Very easy to get caught up in it all. So what I would do if I were really trying to figure things out, if I go, I want to make sense of all of this, all that I'm gathering. I want to be able to compartmentalize, piecemeal this and that bit of info. What do? Take one of my notepad paper sheets and start making Venn diagrams. Source A, source B, and then the third in the Venn diagram, my thoughts. Hello, guys. Trying to look at my little squishy phone font. Looks like Andrew. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. It's just very easy. And sometimes when it comes to infotainment, we don't give room for humor. Because at least what the humor does is I don't know if it reduces the inflammation from an emotional standpoint where we get easily triggered, but at least we can I don't know if there's a blow being induced, but it softens things. At least we can take a more detached look at the information given at a point in time. I mean, that's one of the reasons why
No,
I would tune into at the
TJK
time
is
the
out
old
now.
school
Come next
Daily
Wednesday and
Show.
quarter.
I'm not counting the Trevor Noah iteration or the recent iteration. I think I forget the scuttlebutt what happened, why Jon Stewart took it back
Capitalism law, which will
or
be like the
reclaimed it.
legislature.
But
But then now, if you say that, people are gonna be like, "Oh,
it's very
you're not
dangerous for
communist, you're
us to take
socialist.
things we
What's
see
up?"
as gospel. That's the absolute truth.
I am Chinese. Listen.
Do you
Do I
see
believe
the
in certain
video
types of
of
people or person?
Dixon
I
Meyer
do dislike the
about
government
the.
only.
That's the thing. One thing goes. Whether we want to other videos of mine. Hey there. About this Puritanism we can't escape,
Yeah.
at least in America. We all want this pure as snow, like Mary had a little
I
lamb,
have a regular
the
stream.
fleece
It's on
being white
YouTube.
as snow
Go check it out.
in our public figures. Hello. Trying to look at the font here. It looks like I'm reading. I think one person looks like
I think Hong Kong is very looking very clean lately.
Antonio and Laserfire.
Honestly, like Hong Kong is
And
not
there's
going
my
as well,
homie.
unfortunately.
Hey, Jason. Good to see you. And going back to this
Wait, TJK
Puritan
is on
mindset
X. You know, I've
Americans
been
can't
like making a
shake
total of 3 accounts.
in their public figures. I mean, I don't know if it started.
When did I start
Well,
speaking up
let's
for
just
things?
say, let's go back to
2 years before the
Watergate
pandemic.
real quick. Of course, you got the subsequent actions taking place post Watergate and all that went with that. And in my memory,
Bridge clap for
there
that one.
was,
Bridge clap.
in my teenage
Oh, you
mind,
didn't know I stream
in the
now?
early 90s when it came
Well, I do
to
a regular stream now.
the Clinton years with the Lewinsky scandal and all that came with that,
Talk about
with
free jam.
respect to
Oh, you mean like the aircraft
look
carriers?
at.
Checkmate to the U.S. Navy, but they're getting the years to come out of the Fujian. It operates on
Appreciate the
spectrum
compliment,
bases
Jason.
all over China. The Fujian, yeah,
So
I did a video on this.
it's this Puritan mindset. Whether we're
The bridge.
talking
You want to see the bridge again?
purity in the
This is
morality
the
and
original video.
whatever, uh, for example, uh, they're
This
looking
bridge
for
was built at the
perfection
U.S.
in the wrong
Naval Training
places.
Airfield. Streaming on YouTube. No, I'm also on Twitch
So, in
and
other
Rumble.
words, even Obama, and especially with Biden, take your pick about what flaw, minuscule
Science
or
just for
tragic.
experiments.
Take your pick.
YouTube once at one point people
That we
told me
want
like,
our leader to be
everything's all
blameless,
staged.
and that's a good aspiration to have.
It's
But the
all
moment
staged.
that
And then now
leaches
we built the
out
bridge, and a year later it
that
collapsed.
there's an imperfection, small or large,
What was the catalyst? It just
that's it.
it,
That's it.
basically I think the pandemic changed a lot of people,
I am not the
including me.
biggest
I was just very interested in
Trump
how people,
supporter,
like
I'll
how people
admit.
didn't think that this was coming from China.
So I think in certain ways there's this weird tension
Like I can even
in
show you on
the
Chinese
American
platforms
landscape at the very least. I can't speak for the
it's
worldwide
literally I'm gonna
populace
show you.
in
I'm
how
showing
they
you this
look at it
video
from
right
afar. I
now.
can't
I don't
speak
know
to
where
them.
from. It's an AI
They
generated
have
video.
various
It's
different
literally a
stigma,
Chinese social
cultural,
media
otherwise, that
platform.
determine their reception of this and that.
And this is
But
the
it's
site.
very easy to take a segment and be so emotionally
No,
invested,
it's
whether
the
that's
app.
yay or if it's oh
This is
my
the TikTok
god,
app. So
outrage.
it seems like
It's
half of
very
it is just the
easy to
side
be
of
victim to that.
the mountain that they had
And yes, there is a
all
danger
the
of
things
being
into.
aloof,
It wasn't
but I
sufficiently
think
done,
there's a virtue to
and they
being
knew that they
detached
had a lot
and
of
looking at it from afar where you're not so outraged and just
because a lot of times
taking
it's built on
things
bridge, right?
in there, as I
So
mentioned in my
they
previous
but once
impromptus,
you start rolling cars onto it, that's when things start
Say happy birthday, Emma. It's
as well. So
well, how
this
many?
is
Well, many years to you, Emma. Appreciate you tuning in. How many years young are
this is
you,
what we
Emma?
found
If you don't mind my
in
asking.
the
God grant you many years. God grant you many years. God grant you many, many years. Happy birthday to you, Emma. So it's a good
this
thing
is
to
the
say
promotion
that you're
video,
happy
and they
for
collapse.
another year around the sun, or what is it? Another year around, another revolving around the earth. I forget the phrase.
I think people noticed it beforehand,
So
so that's why they
it's
evacuated everybody and
uh,
shut the bridge down.
so
Nobody got hurt, at least.
again, when he got reelected, I was, hey, you know, part of me wishes I was still in my 20s. Things would be less painful in terms of my athletic pursuits. Jason may know the struggle, but
This person literally just crossed this bridge yesterday,
as far as this aloofness that I talk about, it's a danger,
and now it
but
collapsed.
a lot of times we don't take the back seat we need to take when it comes to
This is
looking at
750 meters. So
people in
now
positions
what's
of
that? Like a quarter of
prominence.
a mile, maybe,
Take
or
leadership, for
half a
example,
mile.
like Trump, or I would say even Obama. Everyone's going to have their list of virtues, and I don't like using the word vices, but that is the common trope, the common counterbalance. For every virtue, there is a vice to account for, to
Well, the thing is,
consider.
you can't really repair it
And so
because it
it's
collapsed.
very easy to get triggered in one direction or another. I remember going back to the reelection of the man. People talk Orange Man. I look at him as the
Being able to
Dawn,
run
just
cars on it is
because
just like a
I think
fact.
it's funnier than the
Being able to
Orange
do
Man.
this
I think
like
Orange Man is overplayed. Emma, what?
this is
I don't know where you are in the world if you're still watching, Emma, but did you get to celebrate at the very least? I
we started
usually
getting
tell
cars
people when it's their
in
birthday,
January this year. It's
enjoy
only been 6 months.
your day
That's crazy.
because it's your day. I'm pretty chill when it comes to my birthday. I'm very bad at planning. So as much as I like to get all my friends together, I'm not good at that. I'm not good
They
at
said they won't
getting people
plan
gathered.
anything next year
But
at all.
what have you done today if you did anything,
They
or what
underestimated
have you
how
normally
big
done
it's
for
gonna
your
be.
birthday in
Oh,
celebrating
the
that?
Boulevard?
Like,
Yeah. So
I don't know if
this
you're
was cool.
into
Like Boulevard
planning
spa.
huge parties.
There was one car that like hit
I
exit
like
and it like
my
looked like it
game
was like a
plan
ghost
typically when it
of a
comes to
car.
crowds is I
But
zone them out, meaning I go group to group. I like to be
just
more
like strapped
intimate,
into
so
the
like
gate.
two, three people max. Because what I end up doing is I look,
Is that the bridge with the
I'm
white? It's
attentive,
not
then I
the.
go
It's
to
not
the
the yellow
next
one.
person. So that's how I usually am. That's how I usually go
Cause it's
about it.
almost seemed like
I
it's
don't
a
like being in
plateau.
heavy
Like it
crowds where I'm so like I'm going left and right, listening to people. That's just how I operate.
yeah, you're right, Napoleon. So
I'm curious,
usually
Emma.
when
How
you
do
run through
you
that
are
bridge,
you
especially
very
above the
chill when you
block,
celebrate?
it's flowed
I
into
think
pockets of
I am
bridge.
that way only because I don't. I mean, depends on what mood I am as well. Um,
I'm trying to
I'm
find
trying
someone
to
that
be
can
more
like
like be
promote it.
about the
Because usually
guests.
they will
Let them
have
enjoy their fun, and
the
that's how I
images, the
celebrate.
structure beforehand.
Um,
Let's see.
so I was gonna say something about
No,
when
it
the
doesn't look
Dawn
like
got
they just
reelected,
promoted.
and call me triggered, but I
No,
just
all the videos
don't
just
sit
copy
well when
and
people
put
think
it like
like
not.
God's answered our
Oh, this
prayers.
one is.
All our prayers are answered.
Yeah, I
Like
know
he's
who
the next coming, a sweet baby Jesus.
of the road.
Everyone's free
So
to hold that
there used to
conviction.
be this
I'm
they used
just
to
telling
have
you
this
how I
bridge here for the road
perceive
down here, and then it
that
got this new bridge got built, so
elation.
they're using this. It's
And
the
I'm the same way when it
road
comes to people saying, oh my
that
God, the
looks
world's
good
gonna
at night,
end.
up in the
I'm the same way.
up on top
I
here.
like to wait things out. And I think what a lot of people are
Yeah,
doing in
the
retrospect, the
champions.
analytical types who are in positions of analytical leadership, when it comes to that stuff, we have to give time. We have to give that backseat treatment when everything's said and done and say, This, when it's all said and done, this is what this is what really shaped their leadership in the world of popery, or shameless popery, as one might call it, for those who are belonging to the Church of Old Rome. And we could talk about the pontificates of X, Y, or Z. So in recent times, current Pope Leo, his pontificate is shaping out the way it is. Benedict's had his, Francis has had his, Pope John Paul II has had his, and people need to give room for that stuff to breathe so that the appraisal of XYZ's pontificate or reign, so it can be properly appraised when we look at it from a 1,000-foot view versus a 50-foot or even a 10-foot view when it comes to this and that pontificate. Because I've seen people respond to pontificates or leaderships or reigns in certain patterns. I'll take, for example, just because that's at least the one where I'm most cognizant of every nook and cranny or move he had done, every word. Thanks to social media, everyone's hunkering down. What is he going to say next? What am I going to be outraged by next? Or what am I going to say? I can agree with that. And I think that's my joke about a lot of American people who belong to the Church of Old Rome, who, they teeter and totter at every phrase, every action, and they'll say, "It is this." Oh wait, and even the encyclicals he puts out, everyone's waiting to pick it apart. By golly, let the man's leadership breathe. And so, like right now, as I'm listening to China Insider, it's just infotainment. When I listen to Gutfeld, it's infotainment. It allows me to chuckle. Oh, I appreciate that. I forget to plug my PayPal. I'll plug it in if I don't forget. I just forget. So that's the thing about how I try not to be so glued emotionally. And that's usually the first wave of anchoring one's thoughts and opinions based on what they listen to, based on what they read, and whatever else, how they receive newly provided information. And part of that is you're only getting a slice of the pie. Hopefully one will realize that pie is vastly bigger than you realize, than you anticipate, and just understand. Be thankful you get that single slice of the pie. And at least you're actively seeking it out, if that makes sense. As Nick Norwitz, one of my recently discovered YouTubers, he's an MD from Harvard. He's a voracious researcher, and it does help that you stay curious, that you're not overly invested in, or at least the settled science, as it were. Nothing is truly settled. Don't be so complacent. People always have this tension about complacency versus urgency or discontent. That's what I would think. The tension would be more accurate to say I'm content versus I'm discontent. You have to be able to ebb and flow between the two dynamics because, yes, you want to be able to rest your head on certain degrees of knowledge because otherwise you're just going to be on edge more than what it's worth. And that's one thing we have to contend with. And in sense of we want that continuum to flow. And that's one thing we have to keep in mind when it comes to infotainment, especially. The reason why I don't tune so much to other media is because they're not infotaining enough. Where they may give me info, but it's almost like I mentioned, life is too short to stay angry. Give us something fresh to chew on. It's like trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat. Give me something good to eat. They don't give me something good to eat. They don't know how to inject humor, and I would even say those who try, they're not doing a good job. They're not doing a good job of cracking jokes. That's why a lot of infotainment ventures don't stick. They're, I mean, are there YouTubers I subscribe to? I think there are a couple or a few. You can be outraged for as long as you are, but if there's no entertaining value at the same time, I just go, wake me up when you got something new to say. You know, I'll name drop when it's appropriate, but you know, I appreciate those who want to take up the mantle and fight the quote culture war. I'm not about the culture war. I'm about trying to have a conversation and learn as much as I can about the other by truly encountering the other. Part of the encounter with the other is a kinetic effort in that I'm going to empty out whatever assumptions I may or may not have, any prejudices I may or may not have. And that should be a fun venture in itself. Like, I know I was at a gathering with a couple of other friends where I said, I'm just listening. Is that so wrong to just be silent and just listen to other people's story? Because as I'm learning in my class, why interrupt someone's storytelling? Why am I going to interject and affect a naturally, organically provided picture of a situation that without that complete picture, I'm not able to triage the situation accordingly? So likewise, when I'm hanging out, I want to know your story before I make any assumptions. And everyone's looking for that blanket cover, that blanket statement, that blanket opinion, and not treating. Everyone looks, like I mentioned in my other impromptus, talking about a panacea. Everyone wants a panacea because why? It's convenient. It's super or stupidly convenient. I hate to put it that way. Because, I'm sorry, but getting to the bottom of stuff, just like this guy who's doing his, this guy does lawn work in my complex. No one wants to do the hard work of figuring stuff out. Here he goes. I'm sorry, but getting to the bottom of things, hopefully you can. Hello, good to see you. Well, hey, don't be a stranger. Don't be a stranger. I hope what I'm saying makes sense, but I'm going to say it again. Doing the lifting and heavy lifting of figuring someone out or just simply encountering a person, it's hard work. I'm sorry, it's hard work. And so to classify certain individuals, and I know there's that tension between the collective and the person. We all want that panacea to solve a problem. At least if you're going to provide a wide sweeping solution for what appears to be a wide sweeping problem, at least give a proper reasoning behind it. It's just that nobody wants to go through the hard work of proper phrasing in order that your message would be better received, other than severe outrage. Again, going back to emotional investment. Is there a need to be sensitive to those emotions? On one level, yes. On one level, it is difficult. I'm sorry, but you got to go through the difficult in order to make things right. So it's like what I chimed in about respect. It's often not what many think it is. And if done properly on certain levels, it would actually appear disrespectful because you come at it very detached, almost aloof. That's what I chimed in my class discussion online. That if you respect borders and boundaries, it would really come off as disrespectful. And at the same time, if I go in and I'm invested in the person, then people will say that's super emotional. I mean, what happened to nuance and balance? Harmonized statements. It's funny that people don't respect. People like to think that empathy is one way, but empathy has to go both ways. I think that's part of my folly is that I'm empathetic to a business person or a company's sense of responsibility. And it's very easy to go one way or the other to the extreme, and we can get enslaved by that one extreme. And I know people. I remember when I was doing my essays in high school, particularly, is that I would argue both sides. Yes, I need to have an argument, but I often say this is the argument I'm making, that I'm more in the middle. I don't think that flew in the eyes of my English teacher at the time. Good old Ms. Hammond. I know she ultimately kicked the bucket. I think when I was her student, she was up there in age. I don't know how up there in age, but she was a interesting cat. I'll say that. But going back to things being a two-way street, I can empathize with the business owner and the customer at the same time. That's hard to do. So in like manner, when it comes to issues of immigration, having been an immigrant myself, slightly different experience than my own parents, and I don't even know, maybe my older sister and I at the time, we had our own degrees of dealing with that. But my immigrant experience was very different, I'm sure, than most. Being in San Diego and in that section of San Diego, we had various components, again, standing on the shoulder of giants and legends. There had been a firmly established Philippine dominant neighborhood cultivated for decades prior to my dad's and then my family's subsequent arrival, because my dad, he arrived in 1980, and then my sister, mother, and myself, we arrived in 82. So we had all of these things in place. I don't know if it cushioned blows, quote unquote, But I guess you can say we didn't have the struggles that other immigrants had. Whether we're talking Hispanic immigrants, uh, other Asians, or subset of the Asian communities and their respective struggles. Because I didn't even know, to be honest, and I'll admit this, I didn't know what a Laotian was between what a Cambodian or Vietnamese. Each of these groups of people or these ethnicities, they all have different sensibilities. So, on one level, the 50,000 foot view when it comes to tackling immigration and legislation, we want our leaders to do what's right and prudent. But I think there needs to be a conversation about what what is the responsibility and duty of a leader or a group of leaders. And people like to think about sovereignty of this nation, of that nation, of these people. Well, if I had my druthers, I would have that discussion about even interstate transmission or commerce, or in the case of immigration among states. And I'll put myself on the table here. I'm a transplant from California. I don't know if I admit any degree of pride or apology or whatever. Do I feel bad? I don't know. I've been a resident of the Northwest since 2011. I guess I'm an honorary Oregonian based on, especially when I changed my number. That was a circumstance on itself. But there has to be something, and it's funny because people trade one solution for another. They're so enslaved by whatever plight they feel emotionally invested at that moment. Again, it's almost like they're creating problems in the midst of finding and implementing a solution to a problem they're initially trying to solve. And it's just like what I learned in the previous weekend's workshop. Don't make problems for yourself while you're problem solving the primary problem that you're trying to troubleshoot. So going back to that, when it comes to leadership, what are you wanting them to solve? And this is the apple that keeps dangling, whether we want to admit its existence or not, in everyday life. We always, in my spiritual tradition, we often hear the story of, quote, the fall. And there, in some ways, I'm thinking, why is that story often repeated? Whether during a specific point in the year or just in general. I don't think that story gets old or that story loses its flavor. Because whether we want to admit it or not, we are dangled various apples. And we want to take a bite out of each. And I'll admit I'm doing the same thing based on what I have taken on. Oh, holistic nutrition, naturopathy, Chinese medicine, kinesiology, and whatever else. It's so tempting and feast-worthy, pleasant to my eyes, and good for food. And likewise, we feel hungry to solve this and that problem. Are people right in that world hunger is something to solve? Okay. Poverty? Okay. Wage disparity? It's almost like chasing a tail that you'll never end up catching. And yes, does that sound cynical of me? Yes, and I'll say for now, I'm not sorry about that, because here's the thing. What economics teaches people is everything is a finite resource. So you inevitably, and I saw this, like I mentioned in my other impromptus, you clearly see in a place like the Philippines, you see side by side the haves and the have nots. You clearly see that in a place like the Philippines. In America, depending on how things are set up, you either see that side by side or you have to go to a specific neighborhood or a set of neighborhoods to see that. And so, in some respects, one is there for the other. And how you treat that reality, that's going to be dependent upon one's formation of the world and sense of justice or injustice. Okay? So going back to this creation of problems and trying to solve them, something has to give where, as I go back to my nerding out and troubleshooting modalities, scuttlebutt I tried having, that UDCC checklist, that last C, and I think it's something in math too. You check your work, check your solution, make sure it passes muster. What I think the bigger problem is nobody's double checking the efficacy of said solution. So I'll just toss a situation up there for the one viewer still tuning in. Thank you. So, because like there's two. So let's take one thing out there. We'll throw it out there. I don't, and it sounds like I'm singling out a continent. This is only because it's most visible. So take world hunger, particularly in a place like Africa. So the panacea has long been thought or considered, let's throw money at the problem. And I think this comes in varying degrees depending on where you are. In the United States, that has been kind of been the panacea, whether we want to admit it or not. But going back to the Africa example, and I hate to put it this way, growing up in California, it's kind of the same phenomenon. Give the money, where does the money go? One hand to one's pockets. Sad, but in varying degrees true. Again, I'm trying to couch my statements. Okay? So it's like, are the people turning a blind eye to what's happening? Why isn't the situation improving for people in those countries? Take your pick of which country. And the wide disparity. Have we not decided to do a check and a balance? We always talk about calling people out for fill in the blank. But we don't do that for nations where, if you want to be honest, are there nations most in need of the aid? Sure. And we toss money at the problem. Is that solving the problem on one level? Okay, maybe. But usually if you want to solve a problem and you check the solution, if you check the solution, does it pass the smell test? Based on the track record and what's going on in those countries in that continent, some people will say, hell nah. So what's the problem? What's the real solution? And nobody wants to call it out. But at the same time, I have to, on one level, I have to respect freedom having its vote. But at the same time, we need that conversation about, okay, this solution is not working out as we thought. So what do we do next? And apparently, I don't know if that discussion is being had. And I suppose that's the bigger tragedy of it all. And of course, when we talk about the whole Maha, don't get me started on that. Are you really going through root cause? I don't know. I think that's just part of the mindset. And I think until we change that, we're not going to have real solutions. You know, again, I'm trying not to have a cause. I don't think I ever had. Because I've seen it myself when I went paleo keto in 2012. And I think I learned this early on being inundated within that community where don't shout from the mountaintops, be about the example, be a living example. You know, they would say, people will know by the fruits of your labor. And that's tough. You know, especially when they talk about if I decide I'm going to go through this protocol. And so instead of shouting from the mountaintops, be about the change, right? But part of the problem with this top down mentality, like I was going to say in some discussion, say something happens and Hegseth kicks the bucket, or somehow he gets deposed from his position. Who's to say that next person in is going to undo whatever? And so this is one of the problems with the top down mentality. There's something to be said about the natural organic process. And I've been meaning to say something about this stigma surrounding the idea of corporate. Corporate has taken on a stigma, and inevitable, because, and I've seen it in my former employer, where growth can be great, but growth has an unintended consequence. So going back to the whole Maha movement, you point out a segment of the totality of the problem. You're not going through root cause. It's like, am I gonna say good on you, Mr. Ken RFK? You point out a problem, but is it getting to the bottom of it? I don't know. It's so easy to say, yeah, you point out a segment of the pie, but you have to look at the entire pie to see what you got to do to really fix it. And the sadness of it all is I don't think they're going to the bottom of it. I mean, again, I think I mentioned that video I discovered or stumbled upon about Rob Wolf in some symposium talking about a conflict within the greater ancestral health community where we need to go beyond this gridlock between community A and community B and say it actually might stem from, hey, we need to have better farming practices, or at least look at the actual crux of the matter, which in some ways, yes, it would go back to how we treat farmers and the farming process. But I don't think Maha is going to touch that with a 50-foot pole because, believe it or not, I think whether they want to admit it or not, they're still about protecting the status quo. And again, it goes back to the people wanting to stay in this establishment mentality. They don't want to rock the boat. And I'm not some conspiracy theorist or federalist or constitutionalist, although I do believe in the power of the Constitution. But at the same time, people forget it was born out of a need to flip the tables, if you will, of the establishment at the time. We don't need I don't know if we need a new world order, but we need to look at things in a naturally authentic, dare I say orthodox means of being progressive. Because as of right now, if you want to look at where we are as a society, things are kind of regressing. I hate to put it that way, but I even said in previous scuttlebutts, whether we're talking public live streams or member live streams, whatever live stream, that we're not. You can say you're all for progress, but you have to look at progress from what? No one wants to really figure out how to properly progress a nation or society or even just a single person. And I think in some ways there are inherent enslavements, whether they want to admit it or not, to the status quo. There's a point where, okay, maybe the status quo isn't working out as we thought it would, or what's so wrong? Is it so wrong that, yeah, if we rock the boat, yeah, people will be out of work, they'll be out of jobs. But if anything, this is one thing I also think about in terms of, quote, the establishment. Nobody is talking about how to cultivate an entrepreneurial spirit. It's this weird dichotomy between higher learning and the trades, as if they're at war with each other. We put that war in an artificial manner. I think it's like a war that's not there. There's a time and place for either, and people can go between one and the other without issue. The real issue in my mind is cultivating a creativity, though it's kind of a long game. How do you stay free? If you're a freedom loving person, you allow someone's freedom to permeate in their mind on how to fulfill a need and how to be in a position where you can serve people who want your help in whatever area of life they need help in. And we don't cultivate that enough where, hey, I've got a need I can fill. I have a way of talking to people. And so we feed this giant machinery of employer versus employee instead of, hey, I can serve you. I can, and it's this weird thing, like people talk about, oh, I'm too big to fail. I think, if anything, there's a time and place for a safety net, but I think the safety net mentality has gotten to a point where we're not really improving things. Take labor law, for example. We're so enslaved by what was there before. We think we may say we're progressive, but if you really were progressive, then you would rethink. I don't know how regularly you would go about the discussion, but I think labor laws need to be revisited, especially in the remote economy we have today, in the gig economy we have today. The labor laws we have were in place for a specific modality of work. And if my memory serves, and maybe I could be wrong, and for the one person still watching, if memory serves, it was for factory workers, for the most part, assembly line, etc. Now that we're in a place where that's not as big a concern, maybe it still is, because I know there's some factory workers I knew or I know within my own parish. I think one lady finally retired doing airline parts, I think it was. She had stuck it out, to her credit. But I think in the greater landscape, this notion of the 40-hour work week, not that we want to reduce degrees of productivity, but we have to rethink, okay, what does it mean to be productive? Is it by the matter of hours you work, or is it the amount of output you provide to a company, depending on your industry? And that's one thing we have to keep in mind when it comes to being enslaved. And I think that's one thing we don't want to admit. We're enslaved to a degree of status quo, which is why we always see this weird ebb and flow of the state we are in as a society. And we're all looking for the simple fix. But without realization, it takes work. Real work. All right, guys, I think I've gone long enough, and whoever's still watching, appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in and hearing me rant again. Again, given where I am at learning wise, again, talking about the plate that I put in front of me, or plates, who knows if I'll still be able to do these impromptus. They've been rather cathartic, and again, as always, Dumbledoring what's in my head onto the screen, into your ears, hopefully your minds, and not just one ear at the other. So, until the next impromptu, as I'm putting it, peace out. I'll check you on the other side, guys.